Okay, I guess we can begin. So, hi everyone. Welcome to being here with us. I'm Mitchell. I'm the social media coordinator for Society of East Asian Archaeology and the organizer for the special talk featuring Dr. Wengcheong and Dr. Qin Cao. So before the talk, we officially begins, I guess I'll just have a reminder that this talk will be recorded, so it's going to be uploaded to the SEAA YouTube channel in a later time. And may I also ask everyone to turn off the camera and mute their photos until the discussion that came later in the talk, so that we have smoother internet connection for the duration of the talk. And before I officially start, I also want to go over the itinerary for today's talk. So in a few moments, we will begin with opening remarks by Dr. Edgar Hein, the incumbent president of Society for East Asian Archaeology, for this first official book talk that the society is having. And afterward, Dr. Rowan Flatt, our discussant, will introduce the two speakers, Dr. Wengcheong Lam and Dr. Qin Cao. And Dr. Lam will go first with a 15-minute talk about his talk on hand iron industry, following by another 15-minute talk by Dr. Cao on the talk on late shine weapon. After the two talks, Dr. Flatt, who is the series editor for the Routledge series in Chinese psychology, will share with us his thoughts on the two books and the series. We will then open the floor for questions from the audience. So if you have questions, please hold on to them. We'll try to address them at the end. With that said, let me pass the torch to Dr. Edgar Hein for the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mitchell, and thank you everybody for being here. Thank you especially to Rowan Flatt and Cao Qin and Wengcheong Lam for agreeing to join us in this first online event of the Society of East Asian Archaeology. As Mitchell said, I'm currently the president of SEAA, the Society for East Asian Archaeology. We have been around since 1996, and we're a non-governmental organization that aims to promote interest and research in the field of East Asian archaeology through sharing information on ongoing projects and publications, and connecting people through things such as, well, various social media outlets and websites, as well as, of course, every couple of years, our big meeting, usually in person, recently hybrid. So over the last couple of years, we've started trying to do more than just the meeting. The main conference, of course, is going to continue being a central point of what SEAA does, but we wanted to help connect people beyond just that one big event. So we started having more social media presence, and for that, Mitchell Ma joined our team, and also our web editor, Mike Storrosen. And we developed a new website that you're very welcome to visit, where we have lots of events being posted, lots of information, and we're still adding to it and developing it further. Some information available to everyone, some that's especially for SEAA members. We also have a Twitter account and Facebook group and a WeChat group where we discuss recent developments in the field and where people can connect. So it was an idea that was born in discussions on how we could connect people better to make some online events. So this is the first one in what will hopefully develop into a series. We are planning, I can already tell, to a workshop and an online workshop and an online conference next year. So stay tuned. There will be a workshop on publishing and a conference, an online conference that we will be advertising probably later in December or early next year. So for this specific, what I should also say, if you have any ideas for events, anything you would like us to host, any new books that you have out, anything really that you would like to share with the SEAA community and beyond, please let us know. We're open for ideas and would be happy to organize something with you. If you're not yet a SEAA member, please join us. If you don't want to join us right now, it would be nice if you would still follow our activities and see what we're doing, and maybe at some point decide to join us in discussion groups, which we have some discussion groups that for which you don't have to be a SEAA member. We just want to connect people across the globe who are interested in East Asian archaeology. So now about the current event. We have thought we start with, oh, thank you, Rowan just posted the link to our new website. So please follow that for more information. So what we've also been thinking about is to do more stuff, especially for the younger SEAA members and for the new and coming young scholars. And so in this vein is the current event where we're featuring two recent publications by young scholars, in this case, working on metallurgy. I'm not going to introduce them. That's Rowan will be doing that. In a minute, I'll be handing over to Professor Rowan Flatt, who probably all of you know, but just as a brief introduction, Rowan Flatt is professor at the University of Harvard and an eminent specialist on Chinese archaeology. He's worked on a variety of things: salt archaeology, zooarchaeology, early cities, technology, and he has a nice project in the Tao River Valley. He's been has also led a project, a survey project in Pixian, and there's a number of publications coming up on various of on all of these that we're very excited about. But now, without much further ado, I would like to leave the floor to you, Rowan, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Anka, and thank you, Mitchell, for all the logistical setups today and for getting us started. It's really a pleasure to be here and a great opportunity to give a brief introduction to our two presenters. I will say a few things about both of them first, and then allow our first speaker, Wengcheong Lam, to give his presentation. And immediately after that, we'll turn the mic over to Qin Cao, who will also talk for 15 or 20 minutes, after which I'll have a few comments to make about the book series and these two individual volumes, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So I'll just move straight into it. Professor Lam is an associate professor of anthropological archaeology, working in mainland China primarily. His research focuses on the economic system and social development during the Bronze Age and Han Empire in China. He incorporates various archaeological techniques, including archaeometallurgy, zooarchaeology, geographical information systems, and more, to the study of craft production and exchange networks during one of the most critical periods in Chinese history. He's conducted archaeological research in Shanxi to investigate ancient iron economy in the Han capital area since 2011, and we're going to hear quite a bit about that today in relation to the book he has recently published. Some of his new research is focused on Han exchange networks in provincial centers and imperial expansion in during the Han Dynasty. Current writing and research projects focus on social development in early China, including the change of craft production systems and iron technology, the anthropology of commodities, interregional interaction, cultural transmission, and the market system related to foodways. And in addition to the book that we'll hear about today, I know he has at least one other major book project underway in collaboration with Alice Yao at the University of Chicago on the archaeology of the Han Empire. Following the presentation by Dr. Lam, we will hear from Dr. Qin Cao, who is a senior curator who was the senior curator of Chinese collections at the National Museum of Scotland and has recently moved to Durham. She specializes in Chinese Bronze Age archaeology and numismatics, and completed her doctorate in Chinese Shang Dynasty weapons at the University of Oxford in collaboration with the British Museum. and much of that research is incorporated into the book that we'll be hearing about today. She has published widely and curated permanent displays and temporary exhibitions, and currently is working on research that focuses on bronzes from the Shang and Zhou dynasties and provenance studies of Chinese objects in museum collections through the lens of decolonization. The two books that we're going to be hearing about are part of the Routledge series on Chinese archaeology. And the first by Dr. Lam is called Connectivity, Imperialism, and the Han Iron Industry, as you see on the slide in front of you. Following that presentation, we will hear about Dr. Cao's book called Weapons in the Late Shang China, Beyond Typology and Ritual. Without any further introduction, I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. Lam to get us started. Go ahead, Wen.
So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen? Okay, right. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Michelle, for organizing and Anchor organizing this event. And thanks, Rowan, for the introduction of me and also Chao Qin. It is my pleasure here to give this talk about my book. I put the discount code here well, because the price is a little bit pricey. So if anyone is interested in the book, here is the discount. And I want to introduce this book from a retrospect perspective. This book started out of my interest in the study of iron like almost more than 10 years ago. In the museum, rusty iron object like this one here, I put in the slide, usually receive very little attention, but iron was a very important financial resources for the Han Empire almost 2,000 years ago. The centralization of iron production was also an important part in the Han Buddhist economic reform, which was also known as the monopoly policy of southern iron to save the economic crisis caused by the expensive warfare in northwest China. I was very lucky when I started the journey to search for iron. I have the privilege joining an excavation at a small ironworks named Taicheng in Shanxi. I was also very lucky to join the later site report compiling process, which provide an important data set for me to finish up not only my dissertation, but also this book. But my initial thought of addressing to the issue of connectivity, which is one part of my book title, was actually seeded during many museum visiting and small field works in various places between 2016 and 2018 after I settled down. Oh, maybe someone forgot to mute himself. Okay, anyway, can I ask? Okay. I've spent a long time working in Shanxi. One obstacle for me is to look at my materials through a proper perspective to reflect on the meaning of a small scale ironworks in a wider context. After working at the small site, I keep asking myself this question: what is the significance of this small example? The core of iron production during the Han and even the Warring States period was located not in the capital area of Shanxi that I have been working on for so many years, but in the Guangdong region, particularly in present-day Henan and Shandong provinces. The size of ironworks usually is enormously large relative to the craft production scale during the pre-industrial era. Ironworks even consist of like various clusters, which are illustrated in this map, in each of which ironworks usually show some degree of regional specialization. For instance, like some ironwork specialized in smelting, and then the ingots were shifted to another ironworks for melting process. Nevertheless, started from the Qin period, we haven't seen any large ironworks in the capital cities, such as the Wengcheong here and the Xianyang on the right. Iron objects were frequently found, and some of them were made of the latest technique, which is called 炒钢. But iron implements were not as frequently found in archaeological contexts compared to other territorial states. So that's the reason I kept asking myself whether I look at a wrong side for my question. However, seeing the materials of the Han Empire in its various territories prompt me to reshape and reform my understanding of the Han Empire in many different ways. I still remembered one summer afternoon in 2017, 2018, when I and my colleague Francis Ellert visited the History Museum in Hanoi. During the field trip, I was stunned when I looked at the ceramic house models, vessels, and photos of brick chamber tombs of the Han period found in the Hanoi area. Which look exactly the same to ceramic vessels and other Han tombs in Guangzhou and other centers. Taking a look at these objects in the museum, I could not stop wonder how people even in the southern extreme were connected to other parts of the Han state. In this light, perhaps the significance of my case might lie in the relationship generated through the production instead of its actual production scale. In ancient China, iron was made primarily through the so-called cast iron technique. In my book, I suggest that cast iron provides some interesting perspectives to look at ancient China's society and for us to reconsider the issue of connectivity. First, cast iron means iron was melted and then for casting, usually at a very high temperature over 1,200 degrees of Celsius. Such a high temperature required, of course, a lot of fuel. In addition, cast iron often persists for a long time once it was started. And let me give you a very brief example for that. This photo is from an archive of a survey conducted during the 1930s in Hunan to document iron production, local iron production. The furnace used by the workshop in Hunan was about 1 meter high, which is usually like smaller than the iron furnace, blast furnace used in the Han period. Once the smelting process started, the owner needed to hire 4 shifts, 24 hours per day to maintain the operation of the furnace, since it was more economical to maintain the furnaces at a high temperature instead of stopping the furnace and raising the temperature to above 1,200 degrees again. And for each shift, at least 6 workers were needed to do the recharging and pouring the iron liquid for casting. The second question or second issue is related to coordination. Cast iron can produce objects efficiently, even though objects usually are lack of deductibility, which means cast iron objects cannot be forged. However, we should be aware of the fact that being fast and big sometimes equal to becoming wasteful and inefficient. Producing too many goods without a transportation system to deliver them could generate waste. Meanwhile, the production of goods on a large scale also means a risk. Any issues involved in the manufacturing could not be addressed in a timely manner. In this sense, cast iron making in China can be viewed as a process involving mobilization of population, things, and information across broad distance. After the monopoly, it is known that the Han state hired or mobilized a lot of convict and conscript labor, making the industrial scale manufacturing become possible. But even for a small scale ironworks, its operation had to rely on a wide social network. Thus, the understanding of iron manufacturing techniques, the supply system to resources needed in production, the management of labor and workshop, and the distribution mechanism of final products could cast light on the mechanisms that tied the empire's together. As I argued in my book, connectivity should be conceived as a series of relations involved in production, exchange, and using of objects at different levels within the imperial infrastructure. Craft products like iron, even those usually used in mundane life, should be viewed as a medium through which the empire was able to restructure the relations between different communities in daily routines, along with changes in ruling policies and resulted connectivity. Going back to the iron production in the capital region of the Han State, there are some other differences compared to other known cases that I can tell based on my case study. The ironworks in the capital region specialized in only limited types of products. Also, no clear iron smelting site was found inside the entire capital region, indicating workers needed to rely on either recycling scrap iron or the raw materials produced by other ironworks. No other types of production tools, even farming tools, were found from the iron production site. Organization, always a difficult topic to look at archaeologically. In my book, I look at faunal remains in order to understand the social lives of workers. They seem to rely on specialized meat producers to procure their meat. Since the portion of animal bones, different parts of animals were usually dominated by certain parts, and animals were killed at a specific age. While the size of my case study is very small, workers might have differentiated into multiple units, as there are different types of markers like this left on the casting molds for joining the casting molds together. Honestly, even at this stage, I still have no idea how various iron implements in the capital region were supplied. But the distribution pattern that I look at shows that even centers far away from the capital, Chang'an capital, or other production site like Taichung here, usually have high frequencies of iron implements, indicating some forms of systematic distribution. Setting up an ironworks at locations with dense population was not a surprising issue, but it is puzzling to see the embeddedness in the environment and its neighborhood to support the iron manufacturing. In the beginning of the project, I and my collaborators thought the ironworks might at best have been a family-run household level workshop. However, these ironworks did not reflect a high level of self-sufficiency, which is an indicator of a household level production. Highly specialized in limited types of iron products, this ironworks was tightly embedded within the legwork contingent on other ironworks or specialized communities supplying the resources. Based on the body of evidence presented in the book, I suggest that the small ironworks Taichung emerged against the backdrop of an intensively connected world responding to the imperial transformation. This was highly the case because we know the communication and the transportation system in the Han period was quite developed. The production and distribution of iron showed that the ironworks and commoners using iron implements in their daily lives appear to connect to other centers beyond the region. Nevertheless, in order to supply to the capital, the operation of such a network had to transform other territories, such as the eastern part of the empire, that might have advancement in iron technology before the unification, into the exploited zones of resources and supplies. And this connection came with a price. Even for ironworks as small as Taichung that I study here, any miscommunication in the supply and delivery of filled semi-raw materials and probably prepared food might have caused disruption in the production of goods that were desperately needed in the area, as it show relied on external suppliers. Large-scale production could cause product pollution, as we all know in modernized society, and concentrated miners who were often more treated convict labor could plant the seed of riot, jeopardizing the state stability. In other words, throughout the entire Western Han period, the widespread distribution of iron implements and the expansion of the iron industry legwork, at least in my case of the capital region, might have come at the cost of huge expenditure and waste. One may further wonder why the Han state was in favor of the seemingly uneconomical mass production and connectivity that had to be maintained by huge cost. I was very grateful that it is the distribution map, the legwork system of the Han period, and Chang'an is basically in the center of the entire traffic legwork. I was very fortunate that I can join two departments at CUHK, and I can receive a lot of insight from both departments during my writing process. And one particular insight that I want to highlight here is the historical anthropology project. I find Liu Zhiwei, who is a historian in Zhongshan University, his work is particularly insightful for me. And he argued that the economic system in imperial China was operated in a way different from the contemporary sense of economists. Contemporary economists typically hold that humans are living in a lateral situation in which means are scarce. Consequently, any economic action results in the frugal use of means to maximize limited resources. Most economists are familiar with this definition. Economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative use. Instead, the term 实货, which is here 实 and 货, which was often used in official history to categorize economic activities, might have provided a better framework for understanding the mechanism of the imperial economies. Literally, 实货 is a synonym for good, for food, 实, and goods, 货. These two terms describe the ways through which the state supplied subsistence in order to meet the needs of its ruder subjects. Rather than focusing on regional specialization and promoting trade, the main goal of the state in activities that were broadly defined as economies was to maintain and coordinate the production of food, 食, and to sustain the goods, 货, to be circulated in order to meet the daily demands of ordinary people. Since natural resources in ancient China were not consumed to be scarce, it is not through the allocation of resources and the enhancement of production rate that more goods could be provided. Instead, the main goal of the state is to control or even centralize resources, including land, population, and natural ores, so that sufficient goods could be exchanged and evenly distributed. It was the evenness of resource distribution that resulted in social stability, population increase, and eventually the accumulation of resources for royal consumption. The main task of economic rationality in ancient China was to divide and distribute wealth through the state entity so that people in various regions could have what they were lacking via exchange. It was the state's duty, rather than the market's invisible hands, to maintain the circulation of goods to those who were in need, and to prevent the overdevelopment of entrepreneurs and their overaccumulation of wealth. In my book, I argue that the 实货 system provides a framework that is promising to better describe the underlying mechanism driving the maximization and coordination of iron production and connectivity evidenced. The integrated legwork of iron production in the Han period appears to have been structured under an economic rationale similar to what was prescribed by the 实货 system to ensure that goods could be collected and distributed evenly for the state. If the major purpose for the design of such a well-connected pattern was more than chasing for profits beyond the state treasury and responding to local needs, various perplexing uneconomical ways for mass production and supply could then have been better understood. The connectivity evidenced by the iron industry in the capital region and beyond could have guaranteed resources and tributes to be redistributed for the social stability of the Han's various parts, especially those far-flung regions. Despite the fact that the experiment of an integrated legwork underneath the rationale of the SEAA system came at a huge price in a modern economic sense. Iron tools were practical implements commonly used in daily production, just like what anthropologist James Dees titled Small Things Forgotten. But the production, utilization, and distribution of these implements has significant implications in the Han imperial system by generating the connectivity that linked different parts of the Han state into the imperial legwork. That is the end of my introduction. And finally, I have to recognize the financial support from the Hong Kong government and my university. And also, I'm very grateful to many of my colleagues, friends, collaborators, and also my students, particularly Rowan, for making this writing project eventually possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wengcheong. A great way to present the really engaging work that is in the book. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to talk more about this after we hear our next presentation. And so I'll turn the mic over to you, Dr. Cao.
Thank you, Rowan, for the introduction. And so I'm just going to share my screen first. So can you all see me? Great, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to really to say hello, good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. And it's quite a gathering across the many time zones here. And big thanks to Anka and Mitchell for organizing this event. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here with Wengcheong and Rowan. So as Rowan introduced my book, Weapons in Late Song China, Beyond Typology and Ritual, is based on my DPhil thesis, and the book project started after I worked in the museum for a few years, and it has been a real rewarding journey to return to the thesis, and also using the time during lockdowns to rewrite it, and yeah, very much thanks to support from Rowan and also the two anonymous peer reviewers. So first is the choice of the topic. And this is very much an encounter with the very under-researched weapons from late Song, from the Anyang site. Despite being the largest number of bronzes ever uncovered at Yingshu, weapons attracted very little attention. And in scholarship, in compared to vessels. And also furthermore, in archaeological reports, although the majority of the bronzes artifacts come from burial contexts, vessels are always termed ritual bronzes, while bladed items, such as always being categorized as either weapons or tools, and disregarding the ritual context in which they were also interned. So traditionally, studied weapons can be broadly divided into two areas. One is the typology, and the other is the symbolic representation. And obviously, both both these two areas of study are very significant and are hugely important. For example, the typology studies have provided a solid chronological and stylistic frameworks for the various types of weapons. But however, they do not really present a contextual discussion of weapons or contribute to our holistic understanding of weapons in the late Song society. And they do not, the study of typology could not answer some very immediate question on weapons. For example, why were thousands of weapons placed in tombs? And these buried weapons come from battlefields or merely made solely for burial. And also, neither it explains the diversity of the weapons in terms of material, as from jade, bronze, bone, shell, and non-jade stone, and also hybrid forms of bronze handles plus jade blades. And discussion on symbolic representation have been very much focused on looking at the types, the varieties, the quality of the weapons, and then consider these weapons represent or equal to the deceased, the status or military role. So this one I'm showing here is a case of the Huayuanzhuang M54, a medium-sized elite tomb, which has been one of the rare cases of a survival tomb from Anyang. And while it is useful to consider the weapons in relation to the deceased military role and also status, such perspective see weapons to be passive indicators of human intentions and perceptions. And perhaps we should not just ask what they represent symbolically, but looking at them as killing implements in their own right. Instead of solely asking what some weapons represent, we perhaps should ask what they did and how they acquired their symbolic status, and in what ways these aspects impact their inclusion within tomb assemblage, as well as why such a variety existed. And while we also know that from evidence of the thousands of human sacrificial remains and the records of Oracle Bowl, and also some of the very recently scholarship, and we know that warfare and violence were fundamental to the operation of the Song states. However, very interesting, weapons were really the focus of those studies. So this very much presents a gap for my research. And also these questions I encountered that puzzled me have also very much closely reflect ongoing anthropological and also archaeological theoretical debates that is in Europe and North America concerning agency and the relationship of human and things. And in the past few decades, we have seen the merge of a number of overlapping schools of thoughts, and some of the very known and such as symmetric archaeology, post-humanism, materiality, which provided the dynamic framework in approach past material cultures and the shift away from human-oriented perspectives and the dualistic thinking. And in consideration of the material meaning we have on Yingxu, and also the question to be addressed, I have selected the object biographic approach as the framework to organize my data and position my approaches. And using this framework, I reposition the weapons as equal to humans and consider them as if they were living beings through the stage of birth, life, and death, and which moves away from a static view of objects. And also, I consider it is crucial not to stop the social life of the weapons at its death or the deposition of the weapon in tombs, but actually actively and reflectively consider the post-recovery, the rebirth of the weapons to address the influence of scholar traditions, such as the historiographic approach in Chinese archaeology. And furthermore, the tradition of in archaeological practice in China also led to the selective data being published. For example, often only the largest and the tomb with the yielded bronze vessels would receive individual treatment, resulting the metric data of weapons being published, while smaller tombs or those looted ones, which have very brief mentions. And such approaches, weapons then have confined to just focus on cataloging, typology, and symbolic representation, and with a very limited application of archaeological science to weapons. And also another modification I have approached is I did not just limit the examination of weapons to their relationship with human, as has been the focus of many previous biographic studies in Europe, but also their interaction with materials, other objects, landscapes, the spirit world, plants, animals, and linked to the past and other places. For example, a small number of jade weapons were found exclusively in those tombs with large assemblages. Such occurrence cannot be simply explained through the preciousness of jade as a material of the resources invested in its craftsmanship. The use of jade was prevalent in Neolithic China, and the sun ray axis in jade, in both and also in bronze, seem to be stylistic reference to those from the early period, such as the Liangzhu culture in the lower Yangtze region. Considering the weapons from this multiple relationship represented a further step away in shifting away from a human-centered past and advocating the connection of all elements. And we are also using the object biographic approach. It does not mean that I have trace the weapon by weapon, as the size of the material available would not possible to allow that to be a research project. And also the late Song is a proto-historical period with limited contemporary text from inscribed oracle bone and bronzes. But on the other hand, more than 19 years of systematic excavation and research at the Anyang site have built an in-depth understanding of the period and have yielded extraordinary amounts of material remains. As with regards to the weapon find, as I have showed earlier over the Wengcheong M54, the deceased was, despite the tomb is only a medium size at Anyang site, but the deceased was buried with over 1,000 weapons of diverse materials and types. So, so the selection of my focus of my material is the assemblage is included over for the disease of M54 is over 900 arrowheads, 80 spearheads, and over 80 dagger axes, and 16 yue axes. And also diversity also existed among each category, while even among the rear axis, the average weight of them is about 0.7 kilograms, yet the largest one weighs just under 6 kilograms. And so this facing such overwhelming amounts of the weapons and other finds, this led me to consider the biographies of weapons as 3 nested levels. So as demonstrated in this diagram here, which is the individual weapons, weapon types, and also the broad category of weapons. And each level of the biography will contribute to our understanding of various fields of social activities in which weapons participated. And it also allows me to examine the weapon at both micro and macro scales to build up narratives of single weapons, as well as exploring long-term and contextual changes of weapons. And also taking the passing of time into consideration is particularly necessary, as the late Song at Anyang lasted about 200 years. And on the analytical tool of such an overwhelming amount of the data, which is about over 1,500 bronze, jade, and bone weapons of various types, and also drawing from 200 completed tombs at Anyang. And I employed a combination of qualitative and quantitative tools, which contribute to the understanding of the weapon through various stages. And here I'm just using this very limited time to showcase some of the chapters in my book. So I started from the rebirth of weapons through a case study of the curved spine knife from Fu Hao's tomb. I explore how archaeological practice in China and historiography have impacted the quality and availability of archaeological data. And then the next chapter is concerned the birth of the weapons, and using the chain observoir concept. The birth of a bronze dagger axis is traced in terms of their material properties, functionalities, craftsmanship, and standardization, drawing upon studies of metallurgy, bronze workshop organization, and the metalwork-ware analysis. This does not only demonstrate the complexity of the production process, but also enable us to evaluate the relationship built into the weapon at their birth stage. And the significance of the barrier to the sun naturally led to the large amounts of the material remains are mature beta, which is the largest chapter in my book. And in this one, I investigated the long-term trends of weapons in tombs with the aid of statistics and the variety of weapons in barriers of the 200 tombs I selected, which suggested martial cult was widely shared and celebrated, and the weapons become associated with fewer individuals in the later phases. And a martial and a military specialization have gradually developed among some individuals over the 200 years of the late Song. And obviously, it's that we also have some of the largest intact tombs that were excavated by archaeologists, and drawing from the data from the 3 that's such cases. One is the tombs of Fuhao, as shown here, and the two others are Huayuanzhuang M54 I showed earlier, and then also Guojiazhuang M160. I propose that when viewing weapons contain such large numbers of weapons, it is far more constructive to explore the way in which weapons were explored by the Song, rather than trying to apply culturally loaded label, such as warrior or soldiers, to define the identity of the occupants through mortuary data. And it is very possible that elites of the late Song fought as well as leading and commanding infantry forces, and their multiple roles were not just restricted to military participation, but were managing many other duties on behalf of the king. And in my final chapter, I have combined all the various strands of investigation I carried throughout the book, and summarized in this diagram through the stage of the weapons. And by applying this the object biographic approach within the framework presented by the ontological turn in archaeology for the first time to weapons, I advocated a shift away from the ritual-focused interpretation of the period and argue for a conceptualization of some society that valued martial powers and leadership. And rather than passively representing the status of the individual, the multifaceted function of weapons means that they were significant mediator between the Song people and their enemies, subordinates, allies, and the supernatural wild animals, the landscape, and the material world. Weapons did not just penetrate the Song society, but were both institutionalized and also socially constructed. They continue to shape and reshape our understanding of the past. And certainly the life of the weapon continue. And thank you. So that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for such stimulating presentations and great summaries of the work. I'm sure that these presentations will provide a lot of fodder for conversation, even for those of you who haven't yet had a chance to look at these particular publications. It's my task now to say a few words to begin the conversation, and then I believe Mitchell will be handling the Q&A priority once we get to that point. I wanted to thank Mitchell and Anka again for hosting this through the Society for East Asian Archaeology. It's great to have these sorts of events, and I'm glad to hear that more will go forward in the future. This particular one, I believe, owes some credit to Dr. Cao, who asked back in July whether there might be some way, as these books were coming to their final stage of publication, to promote them a little bit and to get the awareness of these books out to a broader audience. And so some credit also is due to her for stimulating this event today. I also wanted to thank all of you who are here from, as we've just been reminded, all over the world, from East Asia through North America to Europe and other parts of the world as well, I'm sure. And so it's great to have us all here and have found a time that works for most people, perhaps not those on the West Coast of the United States, but most people everywhere else. All right, so I'm really delighted to have an opportunity to say a few words about these two books, which are the first books in the Routledge series on Chinese archaeology, for which I serve as the editor. I'll begin by saying a few things about the genesis of the series, and then move on to some comments about of two individual contributions. The idea began with a conversation that I had with Matthew Gibbons, which was initiated by him, who's the editor at Routledge Press for editor for Archaeology and Classics in 2015 at a Society for American Archaeology conference. And based on that conversation, Matthew solicited a series proposal, which was approved the following year after I started some preliminary conversations with a few potential authors. The blurb for the series that I submitted at the time reads as follows. The Routledge series in Chinese archaeology contains theoretically informed studies of Chinese archaeological material. The books in this series contribute both to our understanding of China's past through an archaeological lens and to the broader theoretical discourse on anthropological and historical topics. Engaging with the overlapping fields of East Asian archaeology, anthropology, history, and art history, books in the series provide scholarly studies of new research and syntheses that contribute to specialist discourse in these disciplines and intervene in scholarship that transcends the Chinese context. So that was the aspiration of the series, and I think that these two books fully meet those goals and are great representatives of those aspirations. A model that I had in mind when first thinking about this series potential was another Routledge book in an entirely different series. It might not have even been in the series at all, but it was a book on archaeological approaches to ethnicity in Sudan called Wretched Kush that was published by Stuart Smith in 2003. And maybe you can see it. This is my copy of Wretched Kush with all my note tags in it. That book was written by an Egyptologist and provides a very useful summary of the theoretical approaches used by archaeologists to explore identity preceding an empirically informed case study. I hope that the Routledge series could similarly identify book projects that have a dual goal of contributing to theoretical discourse and providing empirically rich studies of archaeological material in China. Accordingly, the series' aims were stated as follows. The books in the series will contribute both to our understanding of China's past through an archaeological lens and to the broader theoretical discourse on anthropological and historical topics. As such, each volume will have at least one chapter that explicitly lays out the contribution or contributions made to the existing literature. And by that, I was really implying beyond the focus on the Chinese historical context from which the empirical case studies come. With this outline and set of aims in mind, I went out to pursue potential authors. Many of the folks on the call, or some of the folks on the call today, perhaps may have heard from me at some point. And if you haven't, and you are interested, I would love to hear from you. Please don't take this oversight as lack of interest in any part of any sense. To date, I have, in addition to the two books we're discussing today, a number of topics that are potentially coming forward in the near future. Focused on such themes as kinship, marriage, and politics in early China, power in things, urban construction and social transformation in early China, resilience and the restructuring of subsistence, fragments of the Shang, Neolithic transitions and dispersal in southern China and Taiwan, and more. These are a couple of the proposed themes that may be coming out in the near future. Today, we are discussing two books that came to the series by very different pathways. The book by Dr. Cao, Weapons in the Late Shang, was submitted directly to Routledge in 2020 and brought to my attention as a potentially relevant manuscript in the series by the managing editor. In alignment with the series goals, I encouraged Dr. Cao to further develop the idea of how the object biography approach that she was employing as a framework for discussing Shang weapons, and about which we've heard quite a bit today, could be tailored to for this particular subject matter. This resulted in her presenting the nested approach to object biographies that she uses to structure her discussion. This rhetorical move further highlights the significance of the microscopic work that Dr. Cao conducts and uses a central empirical contribution to the research by emphasizing how where analysis can tell us about the different stages in an object's life history and post-recovery approach to the topic. The themes that Dr. Cao explores situate this book within the growing examination of ontological questions in archaeological literature, as she explained to us already today. I'm interested to see how this presentation is received by those who examine the book from the point of view of Shang studies and this broader materiality discourse. The book is full of all sorts of interesting observations and arguments that are based on the technical analyses that Dr. Cao has conducted. She asks and provides answers to many questions, such as whether certain lightweight weapons were actually used in combat, why some weapons were wrapped before disposal, whether there was a standing army during the Shang, and whether those with weapons should be thought of as warriors, some of the conclusions to which she has alluded today. As a means of stimulating some discussion and perhaps prompting other questions from viewers today, I thought I would pose a couple of questions to Dr. Cao about the book and her efforts to understand late Shang weapons. First, I would love to know whether there is a particular example, either discussed in the book or today, of a time when your careful analysis of a particular Shang weapon or class of weapons dramatically changed your opinion about some aspect of Shang society. Secondly, you discuss a host of related complementary evidence in your book, from contextual data to compositional analysis to microware and useware studies to paleography. Which form of data do you feel has had the biggest impact on our ability to understand the functions and meanings of weapons in Shang society? So I'll let you think about those as I say a few things about Dr. Lam's book, and then perhaps we can start off our conversations with any responses that the two authors may have. The book by Wengcheong Lam, in contrast, emerged from conversations that he and I had about publishing his research, including aspects of his dissertation that he defended in our Department of Anthropology here at Harvard in 2015. The book was proposed to the series in 2021, centering around discussions of the relationship between the themes of imperialism and connectivity, and as he pointed out today, informed by a considerable amount of rethinking that occurred after the dissertation during his time as faculty at Chinese University of Hong Kong. This consideration is presented as the central concern in the introductory chapter, this connection between, this relationship between imperialism and connectivity. where Lam begins with a reflection on the evidence for connectivity within the Han imperial context and the biases that are inherent in this evidence due to the unequal distribution of textual records that form the basis of much of the discourse on the subject. Lam then turns to a comparative discussion of the notion of connectivity in imperial context, drawing on Roman and other examples. In a way that parallels the argument style of Dr. Cao, Dr. Lam adopts a multi-scalar approach to connectivity, and he focuses the study on the iron industry in particular in order to examine various scales of connection in comparison. The multi-scalar approach develops a model proposed by James Carrier concerning commodity economies, whose focus was the role of gifts and commodities in Western economies and how commodity exchanges and the connectivities they entail can enable an understanding of both large-scale phenomena and social relations at the individual or small community scale. Throughout the book, Dr. Lam provides a series of thorough syntheses of topics related to the nature of Han society and economy, from the management of craft production in the capital region of the Wei River Valley to the centralized and localized nature of iron manufacture and exchange, to the nature of food supply for iron producing locations, to market integration broadly. Among the many important contributions of this work, one of the most significant methodological interventions is the way in which Dr. Lam integrates multiple very distinct archaeological data sets into his discussion of the Han economy. A considerably more nuanced picture about connectivity and integration is possible because he controls both metallurgical data that illuminates differences in iron production processes and zooarchaeological data that informs us about the food supply and economic embeddedness. My first question for Dr. Lam is, what aspects of the material record are not yet well studied or worked out for this period that would provide even more additional aspects of the connectivity that you are exploring in this particular context? Do we, for example, have evidence that relates to the allocation of grain resources or other aspects of subsistence that complements the zooarchaeological data you explore? Secondly, and similar to the first question that I asked Dr. Cao, what aspects of the data set that provides the foundation for your study provided the most surprising or unexpected discoveries in your effort to understand the broader phenomenon of the Han Dynasty economy? Interestingly, to me at least, both of these books engage with literature on value, exchange, meaning, and social relations that is indebted to the legacy of Marcel Mauss and various threads of social constructionist theorizing that have influenced the ways we understand economies, technologies, and meaning in archaeological and historical contexts. We heard a bit about this in the references that Wengcheong made to the rethinking of what it means to be economic. In particular, this follows some of the leads of the substantivist approach to economic theory, with this focus that he's provided for us on the redistributive nature of the Han situation and the Shihua concept that he has outlined for us. This, for many of you will be familiar, is a perspective on economy that owes much to the legacy of Karl Polanyi and is in distinction with much more formalist and narrow approaches to economic theorizing that characterize economics under the definition that we heard today. I'll end my comments by pointing out that the nuanced, detailed, and theoretically informed studies represented by these books reflect directions in scholarship that demonstrate the importance of long-form, book-length scholarship. There is a tremendous amount of very important work being done in China and elsewhere in archaeology in recent years that emphasizes new discoveries that are being made in the fields of archaeological science and archaeological theory. Emphasis on impact factors and publication quantity can create headwinds that discourage the thorough, careful scholarship necessary to produce book-length contributions like those that we've heard today. And I think, however, these are examples of the sorts of scholarship that requires that type of extended work that requires quite a bit of time and also a lot more ink than is often available in, whether it be digital or physical ink, in the journal-length articles that contribute so much to a lot of our discourse. So this final comment is a call for us to remember the importance of this style of scholarship in the work that we are doing ourselves and that we are examining, evaluating, and consulting in the work that we all do. And so with that, perhaps I'll turn the microphone to Mitchell to manage the discussion and maybe ask Qin and Wengcheong to provide a few responses to my my initial questions. Thanks.
I guess we can open the floor to question and answers, but do Dr. Lam and Dr. Chow, do you guys want to provide any feedbacks to Dr. Fleck's comments first?
Yeah, happy to do so. Wengcheong, do you want to go first or?
Oh, you can go first. Yeah. You know,
okay. Okay, I got to the question first, so I will do that first. Yeah, yes, thanks, Royan, for the very good question. Yeah, this very dramatic impact, that's a very good one. So personally, I would say is the meta-work analysis of the weapons, which I conduct firstly on the weapons collection in the British Museum, and then later at the Anyang Archaeological Station, thanks to the support of the colleagues there. And I think because while weapons still in compared to vessels, weapons remain to be under research, but there's still large numbers of the scholarship and from the Northern Song Dynasty. And so, but there, as I mentioned, it's the puzzles that bother me for quite a while is why such a variety existed, and what these weapons are just Mingqi that were actually manufactured for burial, and then it's just the user-wear analysis or the meta-wear analysis known later is just presented itself and is very much provides the most accessible way to study them using a digital microscope. So I still remember the day that when I was in store with my British Museum supervisor Sasha, and we first looked at the weapon under some of the lamps, and you could not see much. But as soon as I have adjusted the digital microscope in connection with my laptop, when places under the direct light, you can see the very clear striation lines on various parts of the weapons, from the blades to the blade body, and also various the traces as well. On the tongue of the weapons, which did not just provided the evidence from its manufacture, but also provided on some of the reworking during its life stage, and also how the weapon would be bonded, and how would they be treated before they were buried, such as many of them were wrapped in textiles. For the second question on the which of type of data, I think all the type of data are very important, from the oracle bone inscription to the artifact study of using the use-aware analysis, to typology, and to contextual analysis, to comparison. But I think one thing really have helped me a lot is the framework of object biography, and also that through your encouragement and also the peer reviews feedback is how consider how the Chinese material, especially the sound weapons, can be put under the object biography with some tailored justification. And that's very important, that because within such a framework of the different life stages, it allowed me to place the object in the center of the investigation, and also allow me to organize the data from various sources in a very meaningful and structured way to support my arguments. So I hope that answers your question. So I will pass the mic to Wengcheong.
Okay. Thank you, Rowan, for your summary of my book, which is actually I find much better than mine, and more insightful for the structure and my key arguments. And also thank you for your two questions. So I want to address to the first one, like what aspects of materials or archaeological data have not been well studied in order to understand the Han economic system, or more in general the Han economic system. And I will say the daily life of commoners probably is the critical aspect that has not been well studied, but is crucial for us to understand not only the Han society, but also the entire economic system. Because when I was conducting the writing project with Alex Yao on another book, The Han Archaeology, I realized that well, we do have a lot of information related to palaces. We also have a lot of tombs, and not to mention in the Han and Qin periods, we have a lot of excavated manuscripts, and we have very specific information about the administrative systems, the legal system, etc. But we don't have a lot of information that can illustrate the daily life of commoners. I mean, the daily life, not the life of the other world. So when we look at the evidence, such as village, such as the settlement, the residential areas for commoners, or like things that people use in their daily lives, like in the Han period, we don't have a lot of information in the literature. For instance, settlements for commoners, I can name a few, but only a handful. And that number is quite extraordinary in comparison to the area controlled by the Han state and the entire population of the Han in the Han society. So I will say yes, like the daily life of commoners, even though it is a common topic, might not be that attractive in comparison to high elite burials or palaces, but I think the daily life of commoners, especially in juxtaposed with archaeological data, I think this is the area that has not been well studied. And we need to combine not only like archaeological excavation, but also we need to combine textual analysis. We need to combine with excavated manuscripts in order to have a more comprehensive picture of commoners in the Han period. I think probably this is the question for the first one. The second question, what aspect or what kind of data set that I find very surprising in the study of the Han iron industry? Like again, good question, and I will say definitely not the evidence, not the line of evidence that is directly related to iron industry. Of course, we can study slag, we can study iron tools, which I have done a lot related to my project, and I'm still working on this analysis. But in order to understand the operation of the Han industry, and especially if we want to contextualize the Han industry, iron industry within a wider context, we need more information that can help us understand the social lives of those iron workers. For instance, like the animal bones related to iron production sites. And this is like one of the aspects that has not been well studied before, especially in the existing literature. We have quite a lot of iron works that have been published before, but not so much information related to, say, animal bones, like paleobotanical remains that can help us understand the daily lives of those workers, those make iron tools. And I find the study of the materials related to the daily life of iron workers actually quite stimulating, and indeed very helpful for me to think about how to contextualize my analysis of iron, slag, etc. into a bigger context. So I will say definitely related to iron works, but not directly related to the slag and iron implements, even though slag and iron objects are very important, and I love the methodological analysis of these items. But I will say other aspects related to workers definitely are very stimulating. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Fleck, Dr. Chow, and Dr. Lam for your engaging discussion. So I guess we can open the floor to Q&A. So we do have a pretty large crowd here today. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them down on the chat box, or you can also use the raising hand function on the bottom right-hand corner of Zoom. So you can speak. So Maxim have a question. So feel free to.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mitchell. I'm a very slow typer, so I prefer to probably just speak it out. And thanks a lot to both our presenters today. I have a question for Dr. Lam. I read the entire book, by the way, and it's highly recommended. It's a true treasury of information for anyone interested in the Han iron industry. My question is, since Dr. Lam, since you have imperialism in your book title, and like what imperialists do and why we don't like them is because they fight wars, right? And one thing that surprised me in the book is that there is not really a lot of information. There is not a lot that we maybe know about the production of iron weapons in the Han Empire. You actually have a very satisfactory discussion of the iron weapons in the state of Chu. But then when I was reading about the specific Han iron production centers, you're mainly talking about agricultural tools, about everyday utensils, even mirrors, but not really weapons. But we also know that Han armies, of course, force, and they probably had to be supplied with weapons. We also know that people in the Han Empire owned weapons privately. And I wonder if you have any insight to share with us about like how weapons were produced, how they were distributed, and if we don't have evidence for that in our archaeological record, then why so? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Maxim. Thank you for your question. Actually, I also, like when I was preparing my manuscript, I also read your book, and I got a lot of insights when I was reading your book too. So going back to your question related to like the absence of iron, of the manufacturing of iron weapon, and that's really a good question. And I honestly, I don't have a good answer for that. And for several reasons. First of all, iron weapons in the Han period, as far as how I understood the topic, they were made primarily by Chaogang and through the forging process, which means it might be quite hard to identify evidence related to weapon manufacturing, especially daggers or swords. So think about that, right? What you need is just an ingot or a lump of steel, and then what you need is just a hammer and to forge the ingot into the shape of an iron sword. Theoretically, it will be very hard to identify like archaeologically evidence related to forging process. Another issue is related to the location. Well, probably you know this topic much better than me. In the Han period, the weapons, especially those high quality weapons, were centralized by the official workshop, like those controlled by Shaofu. And we don't know where they were archaeologically. Of course, we can have some information from textual aspect, but we didn't find them archaeologically. So that's the reason why we know very little about how iron weapons were manufactured in the Han period archaeologically. But of course, in textual records, we have a lot of inscriptions and even excavated manuscripts. We know some aspect related to the way how iron weapons, how iron daggers were manufactured.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wang.
You're welcome.
Do anyone also have any questions? From Dr. Shile, question for Dr. Lam. What role did the market play in the production and distribution of iron products in Han Dynasty?
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Well, another hard question. Okay. So, in my book, I actually wrestled quite hard with the concept of market, and archaeologically, it is quite hard to identify the direct evidence of market, as if we cannot find like the physical location of those marketplace, then it is quite hard to like to identify the existence or even the mechanism of market, right? And what we can tell is based on, for instance, the distribution pattern of the materials from the production center to different consumption places with different distance to the production center. According to my analysis and the textual information from the Han period, market system definitely exists in the Han period, even for iron objects, iron weapons, iron agricultural tools. Ordinary people could like purchase these materials from marketplaces. So I will say market definitely exists in the Han period and definitely play a critical role in the distribution of iron implements. But what I try to argue is that the concept of market or marketplace exchange is quite different from the counterpart that was developed, that was based upon our modern economic system, and that actually goes back to what Rowan mentioned a moment ago about the debate of economic anthropology. And from my understanding, the market system was part of the state economists, and it was the mechanisms for the state to achieve the so-called CUHK system, to achieve the purpose of even distribution of different materials, to achieve the social stability through the redistribution system. And like the market system in the Han period was quite different from the market system developed from the modern concept, which means a system that was independent from the state, a system that was managed or that was supposed to be managed by invisible hands. So that's the way how I understood the market system in the Han period. Yeah, I'm not sure whether I addressed this question very well, but I will say yes, we have market, but the market system is has to be understood within the historical context.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask another question? I really appreciate both presentations. That motivated me to write my book up sooner. And I really look forward to reading both of your books. Really enjoy the talks. Thank you very much. So can I ask the next question? Also to Wengcheong. So I think your argument about the central government control the mass production of iron and then to ensure even distribution to those in need. I think that's really inspiring. And that got me thinking, and this is far beyond the scope of your book, so don't feel pressure that, I'm curious though, so don't feel the pressure that you have to give a very thorough answer. Just really my curiosity. How do you expect a similar model to be able to, maybe feasible or review in future research in terms of other type of products that may have been controlled by the government for mass production, similar model, and even distribution? Or do you think that this might be very specific to iron and maybe restricted numbers of other essential goods?
Well, that's another hard question. So, okay, maybe the next hard question is for Chaoqi, it's not for me. Okay. Okay, so I haven't thought about that, to be honest, and I off the top of my head, I don't know which type of products could be a good fit for your question. Maybe bronze, I will say, but in terms of the scale of mass production, I will say iron definitely was much bigger than bronze in the Han period. If we don't count the Wuzhuzi and the bronze coins, then bronze in the Han period was important, but might not be as important as iron in the daily life among most of the commoners. So I will put bronze, but I'm not sure how well bronze materials can fit into the model that I just proposed based on my understanding of iron. And that's maybe go back to Chaoqing's topics of bronze.
Sorry. I acknowledge this is way beyond the scope, and I was very curious. So anything you say was I really appreciate it. Thanks.
So from Yago for Dr. Cao, do we have any idea how many people that Shan could mobilize during war? Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands? And are there any methods that may help us to gain more certainty on this matter?
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of the scale of the military forces, so we actually have records from Oracle Bone. So in my book, I illustrated the most famous one, which is from the collection I used to curate at National Museum Scotland, which is the Oracle Bone is known as the Fu Hao Oracle Bone. Basically, it recorded Fu Hao raised 3,000 men and were joined by another 10,000 for a campaign against someone. We don't know who is that it is because the bone was fragmented. So so this is just so that's 13,000 men recorded in this particular one. This is the largest known so far. There are also forces of hundreds and a few thousands as well. But my thoughts on this matter is I don't think we should take the number as face value, but it's also not 10 or 20 people in the for military force during the Song, because we can see from the large number of the weapons excavated and also the presence of the weapon even in the so-called non-elite tombs, which is about 70% and across the Anyang in various lineage too. So I think that's certainly is easily in the hundreds. We also know that there are always sacrificial performance took place before, like for some of the divination, and that would be the sacrifice of the captured, say, Chang enemies, like in the hundreds as well. So if they can capture, so again, this number might be a little bit over exaggerated, but we have found hundreds and hundreds of beheaded human victims, and also large number of human sacrifices in King's tomb, in Fu Hao's tomb, as comparing for them to the death. So the scale is certainly a large. Yeah, I think this is one we probably would be very more productive to combine the data from Oracle Bone and also the material remains of weapons and also the remains of the beheaded human sacrifices, and for a very holistic study on this particular matter. I hope that answered your question.
So we still have some minutes left, but I guess we can wait a few moments to see if anyone still have any questions to come in. Dr. Xie, feel free to ask your question.
Can I ask a question to Dr. Cao?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
It got me really excited. I'm sure you'll discuss this in the book, but I just couldn't wait to hear your conclusion. So from your analysis, what's the percentage or whatever idea you get from the metalwork analysis? You mentioned that you were interested in knowing whether the products were produced only for burial or it was used. What was the idea you got from the analysis regarding this question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a very, very good question. So I just want to mention one thing is because of the limited time of the a PhD study in the UK, and I need to really finish it within 4 years. So my useware analysis have been primarily focused on the British Museum collection, which is not very large, just under 20. And then I have gone to Anyang and carried out analysis more systematically on several tombs, so which gives a more comprehensive overview on what those weapons in tombs and what they consist of. But that data is to be published as an article next year, hopefully. But I can tell you what my observation. And so for the data set from the British Museum, although it is quite small and also it is on provenances, so we don't really know which tomb they came from, but they represented all types of weapons from Anyang, the bronzes one. And also one interesting observation is the majority of them show different degree of wear and use. So it could be on the notches, or could be nicks, and it could be the repolished line on the weapon themselves. And then so is this, and then obviously the data from the British Museum is very selective, because whenever museum purchase or accept donations of artifacts from sources, the presentability, the look or appearance of the weapons are actually selected. So we may not get all the less attractive one. So I have addressed that in my book. And from my observation of weapons from Anyang, so I have looked through all the weapons that are available for me to look from weapons from the Wengcheong M54 and also a few smaller tombs. I would say there's a huge variety there, and some are clearly made to be used and then show very clear signs of polishing and use and repolishing, and some of the show curves from the blades, which came from extensive use. But largely in a whole is they have been quite limited or careful management of the weapons before they were deposited in tomb for those that show signs of use. And then there are some others that have not gone through the whole process of the production, or they've been just manufactured probably just for the burial, as the blades show very clear sign of not have that additional stage to make it sharp. And we also have seen the weapons in the later phases of at Anyang that they were made with high lead contents and also in sets. And those have been traditional termed Mingqi weapons for burial, but through my analysis in combination of the typology and the metric data, I have identified some trends there. So one particular type of dagger axis was selected, and they were always being buried with music instruments. So my argument for that is their weapons are most likely would be manufactured for the function of performance, martial dance, and also display, especially at some of the ceremonial occasion, while hundreds of captured enemy would be sacrificed. There would also possibly be the performance of a dagger axis martial dance, and also the display of that military powers to any enemies there or subordinates, and very importantly to the gods and the ancestors. So yeah, so that's So it's the weapon themselves actually presented them to show that the multiple functions they might have performed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
And thank you for the audience for the questions. So we do have, we're almost running out of time, but if you have any last minute questions, we can also do that in. If not, then I guess we can also thank you so much for Dr. Cao, Dr. Lam for your insightful talks, and Dr. Flat for the engaging discussion. So I guess we can call it a day. And thank you for everyone for attending this workshop. Where you, do Dr. Flat want to make a comment? Oh, okay.
That's the clapping.
Oh, that was the clap. Okay. Sorry. Anyways, yes. Thank you so much. I guess I would leave the room on for at least 5 more minutes, but like this is it for today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you
so much, Mitchell, for organizing. Thank you all, Rowan, Qin, and Wengcheong, and thanks everybody for your wonderful questions. Keep your eyes out for further events like this and other online events organized by SEAA. Among others, there will be, as I said, a publication workshop for young scholars online, which is going to discuss both journals and book-length things, and then a online conference on archive materials specifically later next year. Please stay tuned, and there will be further news. And if you have any suggestions, any books you would like us to feature in this manner, or anything else that you think we should have as online events, please let us know. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.